Just like the street lights lit this town, like a fire in a blaze, gotta burn it down. Can't be afraid to leave this out. We got this far, don't know how. I see danger in your eyes. They know we'll burn down the night. Coming just like the sunrise. You know that we gonna light it up tonight. We gonna light it up tonight. We gonna light it up just like the sunrise. We gonna light it up. Just like a spark that's breaking out. Can't make a stop, can't turn back now. We know that there's no room for doubt. No, we can't turn back now. I see danger in your eyes. They know we'll burn down the night. Coming just like the sunrise. You know that we gonna light it up tonight. We gonna light it up tonight. We gonna light it up just like the sunrise. We gonna light it up.
Hello and welcome, folks. This show is for a more direct conversational format than my other programs, but hopefully more productively than any of the debate streams you can find on other channels. I'm not here to debate my existence. Behold, here I am, existing and whatnot. For those of you who are new, my name is Ember, and I'm an intersex woman of transgender experience, a secular minister, and a skeptical debunker of conspiracy-flavored nonsense, among other things. Normally, I'd invite people of good faith to join, to call in, to discuss, to ask questions, and hopefully to learn, but today we're doing something else. Recently, the SPLC hate groups, Southern Poverty Law Center, for those who don't know, one of the things they do is track hate groups like the KKK and the neo-Nazis. They keep an eye on the white nationalists, the racist skinheads, the militia cults, the neo-Confederates, and the assorted groups who advocate for the same exact kind of hate for the exact same kinds of reasons against LGBT people. So these hate groups that the SPLC is keeping an eye on, recently they've started to offer continuing education courses for medical professionals in partnership with various universities and associations. In October, SEGM, the Society for Evidence-Based Gender Medicine, which, as with every group accepting nationalist and theocratic supremacy funds, is named exactly the opposite for what they really do, they set up shop to indoctrinate physicians in Christian extremist conspiracy theories at WSU under the guise of a CME partnership. They were quickly suspended for obvious reasons, but the fact they got in there was shocking. is nobody vetting the prospective education providers. But they were suspended before serious harm was done, and we all learned a lesson, right? Maybe not. A couple of days ago, the story broke that another SPLC hate group, this one called Genspect, is doing the same thing through the Michigan State Medical Society. Turns out they've been at it for a hot minute, because here is, hold please, here is a post from July about how gender ideology breaks medicine, science, and society. And there's a lecture linked to this post talking about how watching this lecture can be counted as CME credits if you pay them a small fee, of course. A few notes. First, the term gender ideology. That phrase in particular is a special kind of dog whistle in that it has earned an official designation from the Human Rights Watch as a far-right Christian conspiracy myth. That's more than just pseudoscience, but a big red flag for conspiracy theorists of the nationalist Christian variety. As it happens, Genspect has made public some of the course material that physicians will have to wade through, like the lecture linked in this post. It includes a speech by a familiar face, Helen Joyce. For those of you who are newer here, Helen is a mathematician who got the brain bug about the urgent need to eradicate trans people sometime around when her current boss, Maya Forstater, wasn't renewed on a contract due to her unrelenting harassment of a coworker. Clearly, if that coworker hadn't unfairly existed in Maya's vicinity, she wouldn't have been forced to harass them and therefore would have gotten her contract renewed, or something like that. Helen is the face of the organization, which, it should be a surprise to no one, is also a hate group, sharing funding and staff with both of the others and several more besides, all backed by the Heritage Foundation and other nationalist Christian funding organizations. Helen stands out from the hateful herd because she presents herself as an atheist rather than a religious bigot. But she stated on various occasions that she believes in gendered souls, that Hitler was right about the need to reduce the number of undesirables in the population, but also that the Holocaust wasn't that bad, really, and even that the real power behind all the transgender madness was the evil Jewish elite who control everything. You don't have to take my word for that. That one's on page 197 of Helen's book. Yes, of course, she, a mathematician with no experience or expertise in medicine, biology, genetics, psychology, or any other relevant discipline, wrote a book on the truth about trans people. Of course she did. That's how pseudoscience works. So Helen gave this particular speech in 2024 at a Genspect hate rally, which is why it's included in their curriculum for continuing education. For the introduction, she talks about the philosophical dangers of postmodern hyperliberalism, which is ironic since hyperliberal ideologies are definitionally focused on purging the world of views the true believers don't agree with, which is exactly Helen's profession. So tonight, let's take a look at what propaganda the conspiracy-powered pseudoscience group wants to force physicians to watch. I want to start a little bit later when Helen drops the sophistry and talks about science, but first a quick look at a bit of accidental honesty on her part.
Obviously, people are sometimes bad actors, and they seek to hurt each other, they lie, they tell lies about themselves, and the more incentives there are to do any of that, and the fewer bad consequences, the more they'll do it.
Indeed. Helen's career is proof enough of that. If you want to help my career pushing back on this kind of harmful nonsense, there are lots of buttons you can push here on YouTube and even more on my website, betterthanember.com. Now, let's take it from science. And hold please while I fast forward us to the appropriate section. Okay.
This is a specific example I was given recently by somebody who got in touch with me. She does
The word science immediately followed by an anecdote. I love it.
I was reviewing for grant proposals, and it was a good proposal, she thought, about certain sorts of care for people who have given birth, right? And the researcher clearly knew what she was talking about. It was a good proposal, but the criteria for inclusion in the study went something like this: recently gave birth, identifying as female. And in the exclusions section, it said excluding trans women. But then I said to her, well, what about mothers who don't identify as female? Like, do you want to leave them out? They're quite a vulnerable group.
That's true. It's a group of people that Helen herself actually opposes the existence of, but never mind that. Why would a researcher be sending Helen Joyce, mathematician, a copy of their research proposal for her approval? This is a story that definitely happened.
And do you really, really think this person really feels they need to exclude trans women? Because I'm a bit worried about them now. And so the reviewer followed up, and it was clear the researcher did know. She did know all of this, but she didn't know how to write it because she was afraid she was going to get called transphobic. And then I realized there's actually a bigger sort of problem here, which is that the research that she's doing takes it for granted that we know what it is to be healthy. So if you think about the things that can go wrong after giving birth, we're meant to know things like that,
we're meant to know things. It's a strange way to phrase the sum total of human knowledge. Like, there's a lot of shit that we've learned over the centuries. We're meant to know that, maybe letting a mother bleed to death after delivering is, not great. Maybe we should do something about that. We're meant to know how to perform stitches. We're meant to know how to remove an inflamed appendix. Apparently, it's just magical knowledge that filters down from on high.
Better for a wound to heal. That it'd be quite good that you don't end up wetting yourself every time you laugh for the rest of your life after giving birth, or that you're never able to have pleasurable sex again. And so her research hadn't dissolved to that point. It didn't get to the sort of like, isn't it stigmatizing to incontinent persons to suggest it would be better not to have stress incontinence? Or isn't the expectation that you would like...
So we're slippery sloping already. We're saying, oh, well, if you don't believe in my view of gender, then how can you possibly believe that it's bad to suffer, that it's not a wonderful thing to, pee your pants every time you sneeze? For example, these things are clearly causally linked, folks.
To continue having penis and vagina sex heterosexist, but I'm not sure why. Because if we've got to the point that we aren't able to say who's a man and who's a woman, then I'm not sure why we're saying we know what health is and what disease is.
And that's it. She's just laying the slippery slope out there. And that's the false dichotomy, right? Like, if you disagree with Helen's preconception that the earth must be flat, then Helen would have to assume everything else you have to say is crazy talk. If you don't agree that Helen's favorite religious figure is the absolute source for objective morality, then Helen has to assume you have no morals at all and could resort to violence at any moment. This isn't just a fallacy-laden argument, and considering Helen's only actual education is in math, one would hope she would logic better than this. It's also rhetorically charged to delegitimize and dehumanize anyone who doesn't agree with her assertion. That kind of threat is one more clue what she's trying to bully you into believing is false. If it were in any way defensible, simple evidence would be sufficient. You'll notice this kind of attack is only ever one way. Defenders of the globe don't have to say all flat earthers are demonic. Secularists don't have to say all Christians are inherently murderous. Human rights advocates don't have to say the people who oppose the human rights for any minority think everyone should be enslaved, even if some of them do think that. Slippery slope, circular argument, it piles on fast, folks.
And to do good research, you have to think that some things are better and some things are worse, and to have objective criteria.
That's half true. You have to have objective criteria. What are you trying to measure and what are you hoping it shows? Like what is your hypothesis and what is your anti-hypothesis? And how are you going to get to that data specifically and rule out confounding factors and so on and so forth? But you do not want to have a preconception of what is better or worse. Like you don't want to say, well, it would be better if the earth were flat, because think of how much money we'd save on airlines or whatever it is, right? You don't go into it with a preconceived conclusion of one outcome being better than the other. You want to be as objective as you can about the data and follow where it leads you. What does the actual reality show? Not what you want to be true. Fuck's sake.
Your outcomes. So what happens when we try and do research and we've thrown out all objectivity and all concept of what is good? So this researcher is still, she's...
See, this is an issue. This is why Helen is not a scientist. When you do math research, when you're working a new problem, do you have to come into it with a concept of what would be good? Would it be good if right triangles were like 91 degrees? Because it'd be more degrees. It would be better, right? So without that preconception of what's good, how can you possibly be objective? It doesn't make any damn sense.
Working in the old paradigm. She's a proper scientist. She's trying to do good medicine. She's trying to do it in a world where you're not meant to say something very obvious about humans. But there are plenty of people who have drunk the full Kool-Aid and who are getting grants.
Ah, yes. If you follow the evidence, if you see what reality is trying to show you, that's drinking the Kool-Aid. Or in terms of logic, it's poisoning the well. It's saying if you even consider this possibility, you're a cultist in a suicide church. Amazing. But heaven forbid we actually show that.
And they are producing work like this. This is a real paper. Medical uncertainty and reproduction of the, scare quote, normal. Decision-making around testosterone therapy in transgender pregnancy.
Minor detail, but scare quote is a specific term when you use air quotes to scare people. I don't know that many people are scared by the term normal, except possibly Helen and her friends.
So it talks about the uncertainty about the use of testosterone in pregnancy. Yes, it's uncertain, there is. And says that it feeds into, this is a direct quote, gendered precautionary practices that work towards avoiding potential risk through protecting embryos, fetuses, children, and families above all else. And driven...
God forbid we protected the women. Why would we even want to put that on our list?
By a focus on attempting to reproduce normative bodies and people, involving potentially troubling assessments of the sorts of risks testosterone exposure in the prenatal and postpartum environments may pose for the later child and adult development, things like autism, obesity, and intersex conditions. In other words, it's not better for your baby to be born normal and healthy than disabled or unhealthy, and if you think it is, you're a bigot.
So this is the slippery slope and a circular argument. If you don't accept my view, then you'll also have to then you'll also have to say helping people avoid disease is harmful, that up is down, that black is white. She's assuming her conclusion instead of demonstrating it because she can't demonstrate it, because it isn't true. And if you don't just accept the common sense she's telling you, the entailment is you have to believe a whole mess of nonsense that isn't at all related. Can we also just mention how she blew past how being autistic or intersex are diseases to her? Holy crap. I mean, I know she's a fan of Hitler, but while other transphobes like J.K. Riley or Dick Dawkins can't go a full sentence without ejaculating expletives about trans people, Helen can't even talk about the object of her obsession without sideswiping two other minorities and labeling them as undesirables in need of eradication too. Wowzers. Back on track. She said, straw manning what she just read. If you think it is desirable for your baby to be born healthy, you're a bigot. Why? Because if you think trans people getting the healthcare we need to be healthy and alive is good, then you must think being normal and healthy is bad. That's the argument. I don't even have to break that down to show how bad the reasoning is. Oh, oranges aren't your favorite food? You must hate all fruit then. It's childish, and even a child could see how bad that reasoning is. Kiddie table.
So I call this paper the Have a Disabled Baby to Stick It to the Cis Heteropatriarchy paper. And that's where it's going.
And that's where it's going. The least subtle, slippery slope argument ever. And she's their best speaker, folks. She's on a podcast at least 3 times a week, somewhere on the internet, because she's their best speaker. Amazing.
And so healthcare professionals generally, were until the last few years trained within the objective scientific tradition, and that means that they did differential diagnosis, validated self-report, objective symptoms, understanding what healthy functioning was, what causes conditions and how they progress. And gender clinics look like they're working within that, but it's not medicine. The gender clinic is a scenario, it's a backdrop, and against it you perform your identity.
Let's not talk about the medicine and the science conducted in the gender clinic. No, we're just going to wave that away and say, but you're performing identity, because you must have read Judith Butler at some point.
And it's not just not medicine, it's anti-medicine.
It's anti-medicine. How so, Helen? Would you like to show us what you mean? Oh, we're just labeling things? Okay.
Ill health and harm. I read a great expression recently that some people here will already know. It's tooth fairy science. And it was coined by Harriet Hall, who was a doctor who died last year, and she was a great proponent of rationalist medicine and an opponent of quackery. And she said, if you were willing to disregard prior plausibility, you could do scientific research on the tooth fairy.
She just compared the last 100 years of medical science research to the tooth fairy, with nothing to back that up, and no sense of irony of a science denier with dogma just as ridiculous as flat Earth saying that. Lest I be criticized for doing the same. Flat Earth is ridiculous because their central claim is that NASA, the ESA, every space agency, every physics department, every geology textbook, and more, they're all lying about the shape of the planet for some nebulous reason, and only the flat earthers know the real truth. Self-proclaimed gender criticals do exactly the same thing, stating that every medical organization on the planet, as well as biologists, neurologists, geneticists, endocrinologists, and a dozen other sciences, all of them are lying to everyone for some nebulous reason, and only they know the secret truth. So excuse me, gender criticals aren't just as worthy of ridicule as flat earthers. Their claims far exceed the sheer insanity of flat Earth in both scope and scale. Not to mention, while flat Earth is an incredibly silly conspiracy theory, it is generally harmless on its own. The gender critical conspiracy theory is causing a great deal of harm to a great deal of real people. On purpose. Helen closes that portion with, if you're willing to discard prior plausibility. That's telling. It's the presupposition again, right on her sleeve. If you have to believe what she believes, not just because there's any actual reason to, but because it ought to be totally implausible to you that things could be any other way, to even suggest they could be is madness. Just like to suggest the Earth might be some shape other than a pancake. Implausible. Why even bother to look at the evidence? Just like to suggest our planet might orbit the sun instead of the sun orbiting us, the obvious center of the entire cosmos. It's implausible. Why even bother to look at the evidence? Just like to suggest humans might have evolved from a common ancestor with these other primates that look very much like us, phenotypically as well as genotypically. Implausible. Why even look at the evidence? just like to suggest sickness might be caused by microorganisms instead of magic vapors. Implausible. Why even look at the evidence? Space-time curves gravity? Implausible. Machines that can fly like birds? Implausible. Using electromagnetic waves to transmit data through thin air? Really implausible. Putting slivers of glass on your face to correct poor vision, like Helen does herself, well, now that's just crazy. The Earth is millions of years old, and there once were dinosaurs here? Unthinkable. All of science must be lying for some reason, because otherwise I was wrong about something, and that obviously can't be the case. This is the language of science denial, and it's the fertile soil pseudoscience grows best in. It's where conspiracy theories thrive. Real science doesn't need to make arguments to the consequent or appeals to emotion, tradition, or slippery slopes. It doesn't need to try to nitpick alternatives to just declare what you already believed must be true for no reason other than it was your belief, and therefore it was right all along. Science can just simply show you the evidence, such as on my website, betterthanember.com, where I keep a bunch of studies, papers, surveys, and more, both for my own reference and so other people can access the information. That's about enough from Helen for today. By now, you get the general shape of the talk. Remember, folks, the reason we're covering this isn't because it's hate, or because it's pseudoscience, or because it's a conspiracy theory. Those are all things we do here on this channel, so subscribe if you want more of that in your life. But the reason we're covering Helen's speech today is because it's the flagship of the Genspect propaganda being dumped on physicians through the continuing education system. Science denial isn't continuing education. These courses also include a feature on the American College of Pediatricians, a fake attempted copy of the American Academy of Pediatricians. See our expose on them in the trans rights playlist on this channel. And a panel celebrating ROGD, the so-called social contagion hypothesis based on science so badly done the papers about it have been retracted instantly when both of the two times somebody snuck it into a journal. But silly things like facts can't stop a conspiracy theory, especially when it has a cluster of hate groups and Heritage Foundation funding pushing it. If you want to do something about it, you can. I've linked in the description of this video a complaint form for the Accreditation Council of Continuing Medical Education, which is the group that authorizes Michigan State Medical Society to accredit these Genspect courses. Tell them what you think about Michigan State Medical Society granting accreditation to a known hate group and the conspiracy theory propaganda being spread under the banner of legitimate medical science. Thank you all so much for watching this. Do share this video on every social media you can to get the information out. And as always, remember, you don't have to believe in magical spirits with ineffable genitals that Hitler had the right idea, because you are capable of critical thinking and admitting when you may be mistaken, because you are better than religion. We'll see you soon. Thanks to all our patrons and top-level members for October. Miranda, Karen Butcher, Jessica the Trans Metal Alchemist, Robin Webster, Maya Adkisson, Jimmy Tux, Ian Chen, Kalasia, Lilith, The Barely Bearable Atheist, Eric Wander, Jason Jacoby, Godless Engineer, Jester, Lil of All Trades, Deviant Outcast, and Kelly King, the Detroit Atheist Queen. And you can add your name here next month by signing up at patreon.com/betterthanember. or by joining memberships here on YouTube at the Cinder level, which includes all the custom emojis, tons of member-exclusive content, member-only live streams, and a bunch of other stuff. I deeply appreciate all the supporters who keep this channel going. Thank you all so much. Because of you, we're building a wonderful community that I'm very proud of.
Just like a spark that's breaking out, can't make a stop.